It's Friday, February 13th, 2026. We're basically apologizing to commie street orcs now. We've got a Friday 5-pack and Ask or Tell Me Anything next on the AM Update. Thank you for making it through another week on the AM Update. I appreciate each and every one of you for listening. If you wouldn't mind, please give the podcast platform of your choice a 5-star review under the AM Update profile. I greatly appreciate those. We're racking them up slowly but surely, bit by bit, week after week. We begin with a Friday 5-pack this morning. According to Senator Mike Lee, there are now 49 senators who have pledged their support for the Save America Act. That was as of yesterday evening anyway. The Save America Act, that's a version of Chip Roy's bill, actually authored also by Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, that requires proof of citizenship and voter ID in order to vote. It was passed in the House earlier this week. It heads to the Senate, where Mike Lee, who is the bill's sponsor in that chamber, says they're closing in on that 50th senator to support this bill. Still outstanding. I think I saw Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, among others. I think that 49 includes John Fetterman, a Democrat who has indicated he's in favor of passing that law as well. So maybe a little bit of good news to start things out this morning. Before we go back to Minneapolis, the Justice Department moved to drop federal charges against 2 men charged with assaulting immigration and customs enforcement officers in Minneapolis last month, including one Venezuelan defendant who was shot in the leg by an officer, citing, quote, newly discovered evidence that was, quote, materially inconsistent with the allegations against the men. The filing, entered Thursday by U.S. Attorney in Minnesota Daniel Rosen, moves to dismiss the charges against the men with prejudice, meaning the charges cannot be reintroduced. In January, the 2 men, we had the story on the AM Update, Alfredo Alejandro Ayornia and Julio Cesar Sosa Silas, were charged in a federal criminal complaint with forcibly assaulting, resisting, or impeding federal officers in performance of their official duties. The charges came after Sosa Silas was shot by an ICE officer, which drew nationwide attention amid the federal fracas in the Twin Cities. It's unclear what specifically was the new information that led to the charges getting dismissed, but the government's account of the alleged assault apparently was not consistent. So we go this week from saying Operation Metro Surge. That was also announced yesterday morning, thanks to Borders R. Tom Owen. Operation Metro Surge, that's over now. Saying we've got cooperation, we've got all the cooperation we need, we're going to pull out even further. Now we're dropping charges against 2 individuals who we thought assaulted ICE agents in Minneapolis. Because why the heck not? Heated exchange on Capitol Hill on the topic of those commie street orcs that were trying to gum up the works of ICE operations in the Twin Cities. Attorney General Keith Ellison of Minnesota was grilled by his neighboring state senator, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin.
I can't imagine encouraging somebody that supported me politically to go and put themselves into harm's way. I can't imagine that, particularly when you know that these law enforcement officials had been shot at, a couple of illegal immigrants inadvertently killed because people were shooting at ICE officers. Their vehicles have been rammed by some of these peaceful protesters, probably the trained activists. They've had rocks thrown at their vehicles. I can't imagine encouraging people, put yourselves in harm's way. Get out there and record that. I, as a government official, would have said, back off. Let us work with ICE. Let's cooperate with them. Let's see if we can't de-escalate this. But Attorney General, you did the exact opposite. And 2 people are dead because you encouraged them to put themselves into harm's way. And now you're exploiting those 2 martyrs. That was a tragedy. It never should have happened.
Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson letting Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison have it there. Mr. Jeremy Carl is the nominee from President Trump for Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations. He had a hearing in front of the Senate yesterday where he made this pretty bold statement. Listen.
What do you mean when you say that you believe in the Great Replacement theory?
Senator, thank you for that question. This refers to the intentional demographic replacement of Europeans in Europe. It was invented by Renaud Camus, who was a French scholar.
You think there's an active effort to, quote unquote, replace Americans right now?
Senator, I think the Democratic Party, through its immigration policies, has certainly shown signs of that.
And I don't understand that. So you are saying that if more Americans are Black or Latino Americans, that somehow weakens America because it puts whites in a minority.
No skin color was actually mentioned there, Mr. Booker. That's what we call telling on yourself. There was no skin color mentioned until Cory Booker brought it up. Now, why would he say that? Why would he assume it's black and brown? Latino, as he says. Talk about telling on yourself. In the definition that Jeremy Carl provided, that's Trump's nominee for Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations, which is a position I never knew existed. Jeremy Carl cites nothing about skin color. It was Cory Booker who inferred that American already means or automatically means white. That's interesting. Puerto Rico's governor this week signed a bill that amends a law to recognize an unborn baby as a human being. A movement doctors and legal experts, of course, are preening about and will have deep ramifications for the U.S. Caribbean country, or territory, I should say. The amendment was approved without public hearings and amid concerns from baby-killing proponents who warned it would unleash confusion and affect how doctors and potentially pregnant women are treated. Great job, Puerto Rico. Strange new respect for Puerto Rico. Maybe you can, Puerto Rico, come to the United States after all. You've got a governor who's basically just, I know they're just a territory, but invoking the 14th Amendment saying an unborn baby has the same rights as everybody else. An unborn baby, an unborn human being is, ding, 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 a human being. Great job, Jennifer Gonzalez, governor of Puerto Rico. And finally, we end with this on a Friday 5-pack. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the Theo Von podcast dropped this little nugget.
And I said, I'm not scared of a germ. You know, I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats. And I know this disease will kill me. Right. Like if I don't.
There's RFK Jr. I'm not sure what the context of that little nugget was, saying he's not afraid of germs because he used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats. I love that he's just keeping it real. I also tend to think, I saw some research from Signal, that's CYGNAL, that was one of President Trump's chief pollsters in 2024, saying that Maha might be the ticket for saving the Republicans this midterm election. I saw that yesterday, and then yesterday afternoon, there's RFK Jr., HHS Secretary, Mr. Maha himself, on the Theo Von podcast this past weekend. So maybe we'll start to see more from the Maha world trying to go to these bro dude podcasts and reminding them that they're only able to do the work that they are currently in the middle of because of the election of Trump and the Republicans who confirmed them. Maybe we'll see that. When we come back, it's your turn to ask or tell me anything. That's coming up next. Back for one final segment this week on the AM Update. It's time for Ask or Tell Me Anything. Your chance to ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. We'll start with Light the Dark. Could the reason not a single one of these men in that church stood up during the invasion be because the average 55-year-old in 2000 had more testosterone than the 18-year-old does in 2026? Yeah, there's a number of explanations. There's a number of explanations. Don't try to get too scientific here. And I'm not absolving anyone or anything. But here's the reality as well. In most pockets of the country, especially in deep blue cities, these city-states, masculinity is illegal. masculinity is illegal de facto in most of these blue enclaves. Now, that does not absolve Christian men from taking action, being aggressive when it is warranted at all. But what do I mean when I say that masculinity is illegal? Ask Daniel Penny, who did that entire subway car, a supreme service, might have saved their lives, who knows? And yet he was dragged through the mud, dragged through the legal process for punishment, for taking action because he had white skin. I should say, masculinity is illegal if you have white skin and you are actually a straight man. That's when it's illegal. But Daniel Penny, he was protecting those other passengers, strangers, complete strangers on that subway car. And his prize, getting punished for protecting, for showing that masculinity. I think everyone is acutely aware, all men are acutely aware, that if they act on those God-given instincts in a righteous, even if it's in a righteous way, there's a very good chance that they will be punished for it by the government. Now, here's the dirty little secret. Do you think they're going to throw 1,000 Daniel Pennies in jail? Do you think they're going to drag 10,000 Daniel Pennies through the legal mire? Do you think they're really going to go to the nines for 100,000 Daniel Pennies? Do they have the capacity to do that to 1 million Daniel Pennies? No, they don't. So that's the only way out of this. Yes, masculinity, by and large, very much, especially if you are a white, straight man, very much illegal, at least de facto. But you know why it's very much de facto illegal? Because there's not 100, 1,000, 100,000, 10,000, 1 million Daniel Pennies. So, didn't mean to go off on that screed, but there we are. Bob Carl says, have you heard anything about Bannon in relation to Epstein? My guess is he was just there for the cash. I've seen a lot of things about Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. Bannon's a shady dude. I think I'm there now. Criminal, I don't know. Shady, faux show. Daniel Garrett says, got a 4.5-pound pork butt, needs smoking, and I've never smoked a pork butt before. Rub and cook suggestions welcome. I took your advice on pork ribs last year, and they turned out great. Daniel, I thought you'd never ask. Here's what you do. 4.5-pound pork butt. That's kind of a small pork butt, I think. 4.5-pound pork butt. Let me see what that looks like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've just got this wrong. Because usually mine are about twice that size. I guess it depends on what area of the country you're living in. I would highly recommend, I know you said you already have it, bone-in pork butt. That's the only way that I do pork butt. Now, you can't, like my brother in Washington, he says it's really hard to find bone-in pork butt in that area of the country, so you might have a hard time finding it. If it is boneless, I want to put this as an addendum. Try to spritz it as much as possible. Keep it as moist as possible. Or once it reaches 150 or so, wrap it in foil or something like that, just to keep that moisture in there. The thing with smoking cuts of meat with bone in it is that that bone contains so much moisture that you can, it's great for low and slow. It's great for low and slow because that bone will just keep on emitting moisture, keep that moisture sucked in throughout the entire smoke. So anyway, here's my process for pork butt. I always do it the night before. I always prepare it the night before. There should be a fat cap on one end of the pork butt. You want to trim that down as close as you can to the actual meat as possible. Some people trim it all the way off. I always like to leave a little bit on there. I find a thin layer that'll render off and render and work its way through the pork butt, again, making it more juicy. But that fat cap, if you leave it on there, that'll burn, and it doesn't taste very good. So trim that fat cap as thin as you possibly can without going all the way to the meat. If you do go all the way to the meat, not a big deal. Something I like about pork butt, it's a hard cut of meat to screw up. All right, so after you trim it, if there's any other dangling participles when it comes to fat on the pork butt, you want to trim those off as well. I always use, for my binder, I always use just yellow mustard, like you would put on a hot dog. I would get some gloves, nitrile gloves if you want to, or if you want the natural feel, you can do it with bare hands. Just rub all over. Not too much mustard. You don't want it to be gloopy or globby, but just get a nice layer of mustard all the way around that pork butt. Get your preferred rub of choice and apply it, I would say, pretty liberally all over. Every single side, even on the sides. It's kind of hard to hold upright, but even on the sides. So trim, mustard, rub, and it's called a rub for a reason. Make sure you get it in there nice and good. And then I let that just sit in the fridge overnight, preferably covered with saran wrap. Okay, so let that sit overnight. Usually, depending on the size of the pork butt, although a 4.5 pound pork butt should be done fairly quickly, I think. Usually, I allow about 10 hours or so to do a pork butt. But again, mine are about twice as big as that. Mine that I typically get. You want to set your smoker to 225 degrees. Let it warm up. I would let your pork butt set out of the fridge in the morning or afternoon whenever you pull it out. Let it sit for about an hour before you put it on the smoker. If you have an internal probe thermometer, stick that into the thickest part of the pork butt. Set it out on the smoker. And you're going to want to wait. Again, I don't know if yours is bone-in or not. I would guess it's probably not since it's so light. And just watch that temperature. I would say with yours, because it's, again, I'm not trying to make a big deal about how your butt is small, but I would probably pull it off at like 150 or so and wrap it in foil and then put it back on the smoker until it reaches an internal temp of 195. Throughout this entire process, if it is not bone-in, try to spritz it as much as you can with like a solution of, I like to use just applesauce and Worcestershire sauce. So like 2 cups of applesauce and, a few, I guess a tablespoon or so of Worcestershire sauce. Mix that up, spritz it, or if you don't have a spritzer, you can just kind of pour it on there, drip it on there every hour and a half or so, just to make sure you're retaining that moisture as much as possible. Once it reaches that internal temp of 190, then pull it off, let it set for an hour. I like to let it sit in foil and underneath towels, a couple layers of towels, and it'll keep rendering. That fat will keep, and sinew in there will keep rendering even when it's off of the smoker. Let it sit for an hour, then you can pull it and you can eat it. And pork butt is definitely best right off the smoker. Best right off the smoker. If you do need to reheat it, and it's a lot, if you need to reheat it, tip my brother gave me and worked out really well. Get some pineapple juice, put it in the slow cooker, and heat up the pulled meat with that pineapple juice, and that'll put even more nice moisture, and it pairs well with pork. Pineapple pairs well with pork. So there's a few tips for you. Next time, get a bone in if you didn't this time. Let's go to this one. James says, one underrated win post-Trump, the fear-based self-censorship eased up for Christians and conservatives. X under Elon proves it. More truth, more debate. Not all good takes, but far better than silence enforced by fear. James, that's a really nice observation and a good way to end it on a Friday, because I see that as well. In fact, I see that in myself more often than not. Not that I was ever afraid. Heck, I get paid to say what I believe, but I also represent somebody else. And so there's layers of considerations that I tend to give myself, but that's kind of evaporated. And I didn't really quite understand that or even appreciate that until you brought that up. So I appreciate that, James. That's going to do it for a Friday. Back again on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you again then.